approve the minutes of the June 3rd, 2021 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Okay, I'm going to turn the action agenda over to Joanne, and first item would be the resolution.
So on the agenda, there is a resolution to rescind Schedule A spending guidelines for municipalities. As we've discussed this and talked to the county attorney about it, the Schedule A is part of contracts that we've used previously with our municipalities. So I'm going to ask Robert for his opinion on this.
Okay, hi, thank you. On this one, the Schedule A that we're talking about here was never actually formally adopted by resolution, but it seems that we want to make sure that it's not going to be used again by officially saying we're not using it. I would recommend, if we do get rid of this, to let us place into the contract with the municipalities for using the occupancy tax money, to place in the language from the state statute, New York State Tax Law, Section 1202-U, that just states what the occupancy tax money is to be used for, that it's to be used for advancing tourism, convention development, and things like that, and activities directly relating to and supporting to tourism in Warren County. Also, too, in the contract we use with the intermunicipal contract, the agreement the county uses with towns for spending the occupancy tax money that's distributed to the towns, that agreement does include references to Schedule A being attached to it and being incorporated by reference into that contract. So we would need to change the form of that contract in order, when it comes about to do it, in order to remove references to Schedule A and include a different reference. I'd recommend including the statutory reference to New York State Tax Law 1202-U, which is the state law that authorizes Warren County to to levy an occupancy tax on hotel and motel rooms and that stuff. That agreement is not necessarily a priority for us to handle today on it. That's something that we can work on, but I definitely want to have it done before the next round of occupancy tax money is distributed to the towns, and we would be using a new agreement at that time that, again, has removed the Schedule A references and included the statutory reference.
So is it your legal opinion that we don't need to act on that today, the Schedule A, rescinding it, and then we need to have something in place before the money is distributed in October to the towns? Is that what I'm hearing?
From me, definitely on the lawyer end of it, it's not an emergency to, in a sense, remove or cancel Schedule A today, but I definitely want to have a new contract form in place before the next round of money to be distributed to the town. So it's not something I want to dilly-dally on.
So, but I mean, it's something we can work on for next meeting. Can you have it?
Yes, we can have a draft if you'd like. I mean, it could propose a draft of a new intermunicipal agreement that doesn't include Schedule A and show you what it would look like with this removed. I can have that ready for the next committee meeting.
For the July committee? Is that okay?
I could do that if you want to.
Yes, but not just with Schedule A removed, but with the state language inserted.
Yes, and with the state statutory language inserted.
Yeah. Supervisor Wild?
Mr. Chairman, why are we getting rid of Schedule A? What's the problem with it?
I think it was a procedurally, well, I hate to say this because I think it was assumed it was part of the contract. The items were put into this Oxy tax a long time ago. I'm not sure. I wasn't here when they enacted it, but I think that's the reason. It's procedurally, you want to clean up procedure. Is that correct, Robert?
I believe so, in a way. I mean, Schedule A is a list of spending guidelines, and usually you take guidelines to be a good idea, but not something that's absolutely required. It's a fairly good list here. It's a few pages long of certain examples that you can spend occupancy tax money on and that you can't. And this is for the municipalities to use it. A more broad but still effective guideline would be using the statutory language. from the state statute that authorizes Warren County to levy the occupancy tax. It still describes what you have to use the money for, but it doesn't list specific examples, which could be taken to be, you can use it for these purposes, but not for other purposes, that you could only use it for ones on the list. And that's not entirely true. So a list like this could be a bit limiting in that we could lock ourselves into having a list that we have to follow when we maybe find other expenditures that are directly or supporting of tourism that we could use the money for that aren't listed on Schedule A.
I do think in the past it's come up where a town, a municipality would want to use the money for something, then they would refer to the county attorney's office to kind of look over this. And I think this, I don't know, maybe Supervisor Thomas remembers when this was put in the Schedule A. Do you remember, Frank?
Yeah, this was developed after the occupancy tax law was adopted by the board and
Yeah.
Certified by the state. It's, you know, it's it is what it is. It's a guideline. It's not, you know,
Right.
It's not beating you over the head, but it's telling you these are the things that if you're going to spend occupancy money, this is where you should, you know,
Yeah.
areas you should spend it.
Just as a follow-up though, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, Supervisor Wild and then Supervisor Stroud. I see you up there.
And I looked at this and I looked at it pretty intently and it is a guideline, but if you're talking about an event or something to that effect, there's multiple things that it could apply to an event. And it isn't just more of an accounting thing. So it could be traffic control, it could be this, it could be that. But isn't it just an accounting thing that you can say, I'm taking the act tax and doing this with it instead of doing something else?
I can't answer
I guess
that.
I don't see the reason why we would, for one, remove it now without having a replacement. And secondly, I don't understand what's wrong with it. So I'd love to hear instances where this has been a problem.
Supervisor Stroud?
Yes, well, I have to agree with Mike. I mean, I've worked with this document for years and years and years and years. This Schedule A has worked very well. I never heard anybody have a problem with it. It's a very good guideline. I think whoever developed this originally did a very good job. So I'm having a problem with saying, why do you want to get rid of something that's worked so well for so many years? Thank you.
Chairwoman?
Thank you. This was asked to be brought to the attention of occupancy tax because for years, this has been referred to as a document approved by legislation and by the full board. It is in fact never been passed by the full board. So if your intent is to keep this, then I suggest that you make a motion to adopt this list. It was created only for municipalities at the direction and advice of Paul Dusick, the then county administrator, of his administrative guide. It's been used many times by entities to say, oh, we're spending the money the way that, you know, the county says we can. And that's really inaccurate. That 25% that goes to each town, they just need to abide by the law. And this is more restrictive than really what the law is providing. So I've had councilmen in different places say, well, if the county doesn't think we're spending the money right, then the county should audit it and the county should send a letter into the town saying you're spending this wrong. That was never the intent of it. The intent was each municipality with that 25% would have the ability to read the law and make the decisions within the law. And if someone in their community had a question about it, they could go to that town. This is actually, I hear a lot about home rule from different town supervisors. So I'm surprised that this is so supported when in fact, there's much more latitude for every single town to just abide by what the general law says. And as our county attorney pointed out, not only can it be limiting, but it's now being attached to a contract without it ever being passed by the board. So I'd say either rescind it and come up for municipalities if you want with the best practices as you look at that additional money above and beyond the 25%, or just go by the statute as our county attorney has recommended. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know what we're doing here. We're attaching things to contracts that this board hasn't passed. So Either put it forward and have an argument about whether or not the things on it fall under the law, or just have it be the law guidance for each town, which I would think it only applies to municipalities. It says it on the top of the form. And that's been the confusion for years about it. So yes, there has been dialogue about it.
Supervisor Hogan?
Thank you. It's been our experience in the town of Johnsburg that Schedule A has been long debated. It's been used alternately to restrict spending and to open spending. It's not something that I think is all that useful when it comes to the municipalities and their consideration of how they're spending their money. I think looking at the state statute and inserting that into the contract would certainly benefit the towns more. It gives them more latitude, like the chairwoman said. And it sort of takes the minutiae out of the process, if that makes sense to anybody. We've just debated it back and forth and to no real effect. I support removing Schedule A and just using the state statute.
Well, I'd like to see what the state statute says, Robert, if we can have that for the July meeting before we make a move on this.
I can do that. I can even read that section from it now. It's not especially long. If I don't know if reading it helps, certainly it's a lot easier to see it. I can send copies out to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we can wait to July. It's not something we need to act on today. I mean, is it more general? I guess that's what you're saying.
Really the most operative terms in it talks about the money generated by the tax is to be used, allocated for tourism promotion and tourist and convention development. It goes on also to say that the revenues from the tax, after deducting the amount provided for administering the tax, should be allocated to enhance the general economy of the county of Warren and its city, towns, and villages through the promotion of tourist activities, conventions, trade shows, special events, and other directly related and supporting activities.
I still would like to see it in writing for the next meeting in July, if you can get it out to us.
Certainly.
The trouble I have with that, what you were saying, is it does kind of leave it open-ended for the towns to interpret certain senses on that, where this is more defined. I mean, I personally have never had an issue with Schedule A, but that's just from our community. So
I might.
Supervisor Strout?
Thank you. If we get rid of Schedule A, I'm willing to bet that after we get done arguing the vagaries of the state law, that we put together some guidelines we'll call Schedule A. I'm willing to bet on it that the wording that I just heard from the acting county attorney is so vague that people are going to clamor for some guidelines. And we've already got the guidelines. If you want to improve them, fine. Take a look at what you like and don't like, but I think you definitely need some kind of guidelines.
Supervisor Bramer, you had a comment?
Thank you, Chairman Garrity. I was wondering if for the next meeting, we could have our acting county attorney give us a sense of how many contracts out there have this attached to them. And whether or not those are just municipal contracts or are they for events?
This, as best I can determine from it, is for events from my brief experience here over the last couple of years. This is just not events. This is for the municipalities that the county distributes occupancy tax money to, just within the municipalities within the county. It's not for the special event organizers of festivals and other activities like that.
We are currently working on updating the municipal application to include a little bit more. As you saw, you got emailed what Kristen's been working on and tourism department's been working on changes to that. But as far as municipalities, I've never seen it attached. And, you know, we have a form And then people make an application, at least in our town, and then we award it, the town board awards the money based on the application amount, as long as it meets, and we've always referred to this schedule. I don't know about the other communities that do it. I can't say.
Our community has a pretty tight occupancy tax process. We have an application, we have for years, we have a scoring matrix, we have for years, we have a committee that makes recommendations to the town board.
Yep.
And the committee has come back to us and said that they go by the state statute rather than this list, because they found the list to be onerous in their deliberation process. They found it to be alternately, like I said, restrictive and too open.
Yeah.
So, I'm all for, like I said, getting rid of this list because it allows the communities to look at it through their own individual lens.
But we also have to be aware that the business community would like to see us tighten up how the municipalities, so it's one of the things we heard is the business community would like to see how their actually tax is spent. And I'm not aware of a lot of instances where they haven't liked the town reports. We'll have to get in a little bit more to that. But I think you can use both. I think you can have the state plus the schedule. And I agree with Supervisor Stroud. There will be more questions by a vague reference to a state law than there will be if you put this out there
But that,
as a help.
if I may.
Yeah.
But that's where I think the strength is in the process. If you have an application that makes sense to people, and if you have a way of scoring those applications that makes sense to people, you have strong decision making. It's not in a list, it's in the process.
Well, I think, I'll just speak for our community. Our community, we've had a successful way we spend the money since 2006. I'm happy with it. I think most of our people coming for us are happy with it. So I'm not for changing a lot. So I don't know about the other towns that give it away. Same. All right, so we'll bring this back and then we can decide as a committee what you want to do in July on that. If you want to incorporate it or leave it, that'll be up to committee. Next, Joanne.
The next item on our agenda is to approve a special event funding application from Ice Castles. We do have two gentlemen that are with us today from Ice Castles. Kyle Staniford is the CEO and Jared Henningsen is the VP of events. And they are both here to answer any questions if you have any. Most of the committee has, we've been talking about this for a little while. The team from Ice Castles was here to visit in February. There've been some PowerPoint and videos circulating. So I do think the committee has a lot of background information on how wonderful this event will be and what it will really mean to our winter and our year-round season in the county. So the proposal before you is a request for funding. If the committee has any specific questions for the gentleman, they're here to answer them. Kristen did take a few minutes, one of the attachments that was sent out with the agenda to compare the Lake George area to the other destinations. So hopefully you found that helpful. We think, a wonderful destination in terms of the market we can attract, the location at Festival Commons overlooking the lake. It's just going to be a win-win for the county. So any questions for the gentleman, or how would we like to proceed with this application?
Do we have?
Supervisor Hogan, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Do we have a written request for funding?
Yeah,
It was in
it
your
was sent
agenda
to you.
packet.
It's
I
been
have
in.
a copy if you need it.
Okay. I'm going to need a copy. I'm looking online. I don't see it there.
Yeah,
It was,
it's been sent out a couple times.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
other
do we-
committee members with any questions on the application?
Do we have a motion on that, or we don't need a motion for this? But I do have a
I
couple.
do believe we're going to need a motion.
I do have a couple of, one question.
You want a motion to get it on the floor?
I will
first?
do. I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a motion to get the application on the floor? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Stroud. Now, discussions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last winter, we had an event that was structured in such a way that returned some money, occupancy tax, to our funds. And I'm wondering if we can work forward towards a similar type of arrangements with ice castles that says that there's a certain number of visitors that they need to feel comfortable moving forward. And if it exceeds that number, then we can start getting some occupancy tax back so that we can continue to promote other tourism events in the county. But I don't mind supporting them, making this happen, but I'd like to see if there's some threshold that we can get some kind of return on our investment.
We can certainly talk to them. We're not in a position today to do that, because the numbers,
Of course.
proprietary. So, but certainly we can capture that and look in the future. Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you so much. One, just procedural, there is no written resolution request in our packets. My second question is, why can we not have that discussion today if the CEO is here on the call with us? And one of my concerns about the event, which I will say, I think it's really cool. I looked at the video that you sent out today, Jillian. That's very interesting. I'm sure we will get tons of visitors. I mean, 100,000 people sounds really overwhelming for Lake George Village in the winter. I hope that our businesses will actually be prepared for that kind of influx of people, because normally it's a little bit sleepy in Lake George Village in the winter. But I think it'll be really a neat event. But I will say one of my concerns is about the ticket cost to people. We have, like we had over the last winter, that the ticket sales with the little wristbands, and we got a portion of that proceeds back to reimburse us for the occupancy tax funds. I think that's something that we should be asking the applicant right now, whether they're willing to work with us on that.
I guess we can pose that question. Who would like to take that from Ice Castles?
I'm happy to take that. I appreciate the time to be able to be part of the group discussion here today. This is Kyle Standiford, the CEO of Ice Castles. I guess just in response to the question, I think we'd be happy to entertain some sort of, payback for the occupancy tax grant over time. I don't know what those thresholds would look like at the moment. I don't know, what that structure would look like, but we are open to entertaining something of that nature. Again, I think the two variables would be what that threshold would be, and then what kind, whether it's an amount per ticket over a certain number of guests or something like that. Just as we get into the details, that we'll just have to work together, but we are open to looking at that.
Thank you. Supervisor Well?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just as a follow-up, I think to be fair, year one might be tough to come up with some kind of estimate, but I think years 2 and 3 would be appropriate to try to make something like that happen. So using experience from year one, we can figure out what to do year 2 and 3.
Supervisor Hogan?
Thank
You have a question?
I do. Thank you. So to be clear, in the previous committee meeting, we approved the expense to charge Ice Castles $50,000 for the use of the site. So the request for $50,000 would cover entirely the use of the site except for the water and the electricity.
No, ma'am.
What am I missing here?
It's for the marketing of it, the site.
It says here, why are you, the anticipated cost of event, indicate the items in your budget for which you are seeking funding. We are seeking funding to help pay for site use fee, water, and power.
Yeah.
So
But it's not strictly for the use of the festival commons. We're not going to give ourselves money to pay ourselves.
that's what I was asking.
No, we're not.
But they're saying this is for site use fee, water, and power, and we just heard from the mayor that they're charging them less for water than they charge.
But yeah, Go ahead, Julian. I'll let Julian.
Well, I would note on their expenses, on their operational budget, they do have $45,000 for marketing and advertising. So we would need to require the receipts for $45,000 for marketing and advertising in order to pay back that, whatever amount we give them.
But they're asking for 50,000.
We rounded it up to 50,000. I think that's where it comes from. Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. Could Joanne or anybody explain how exactly we did it with the Winter Festival last year with the wristbands? When they reached a certain threshold dollar amount, that's when it kicked in that they would provide back to us the 40,000 that was granted to them.
And that was an entirely different event. You know, it was hoteliers and people in the community coming together to say, hey, the Winter Carnival is not happening. So they put together a proposal that we would need this money up front. And then if we make that money back in ticket sales, that we would be happy to give it back to the county in effect. Lisa, can you elaborate on the, you know, the back and forth expense? We actually paid them out $40,000 and then they paid us back the amount that they made in ticket sales.
Which is kind of opposite of what we were supposed to be seeking reimbursement.
Well, they gave us expenses.
Oh, they did?
They had enough expenses to
Okay.
cover that amount. Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Could Lisa elaborate?
Sure.
So basically, we did a income statement to show everything that, what the receipts were and also what their expenses were. And the Americade gave us back they gave us back the amount that they received, which was $40,744.02. Their expenses, I still have the purchase order open. They're still looking for a receipt to give us on merchant fees, but we've sent them 38,000, a little over 38,000. The award was 40,000.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Okay, just thank you for that. It sounds a little bit like I am not following all of the back and forth, but in any case, to Supervisor Wild's point about the, you know, maybe we don't know the numbers this year, has Ice Castles committed to a multi-year event with us? And while I still have the floor, my other comment is, because I was looking at the cost and, you know, knowing that there is another option in our North Country communities for an ice castle that is free, can we use some of this money to offer our residents access to the ice castle for free?
I don't know what we can do because that gets into being a gift. So we have to be careful about that.
Saranac Lake.
I'm asking
That's a
if
different-
they would be able, if there's a way to make it so that our residents can visit
looked
the
at
ice
the-
castle.
Have you looked at the video and all that information?
I did, and I saw that it was like $15 per child.
No, I'm talking about, it's different than blocks of ice.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay. All right. Kristen, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Just a couple things. In comparison first to Winterfest, it's a completely different animal in terms of a winter activity. Winterfest, to my understanding, was a direct beneficiary to the local businesses, where it was things like the horse-drawn carriage rides, and it was a way in which the community came together with a direct benefit. And it's not to say that this event wouldn't either, but this is a much larger type of event on a more national scale. So they have other ice castles around the country that are very large. And if you saw when I had sent the comparisons of their events in Colorado, New Hampshire, Utah, and the numbers that they generated, this is much larger than your Winterfest from last year. It's going to be larger likely than the Saranac Festival. So the potential for where this could go in the future is extensive. So I think we need to look at a couple of different things with regards to this event. You know, they do create a very professional event, and there's certain costs that are associated with that that are substantial. And we do need to look at those, and we talked about this, the O&M in the past. So we do need to cover our own costs, but looking ahead into the future, this is something that could potentially change the entire dynamic by winter season. So looking at that critically and then tying that into other events that we have, you know, up in further in the North Country and with our skiing and snowmobiling and things like that, this is a way of expanding, I think, in the future and over multiple months, as opposed to just 1 month, and tying that in, you know, in the future with not just Winterfest, but also Winter Carnival. It has a much broader reach, I think, than what we're just looking at just from one event to another.
Did they commit to a multi-year event with us?
We have talked about a multi-year event, but we have not signed a contract yet. I think these are the steps leading up to that, but we haven't signed a contract yet.
I do think that it will be a game changer for the winter season.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. I just want to go on record as saying I'm incredibly supportive of this. As the supervisor from the town whose season is winter, I see the potential of this, not only from the draw and the symbiosis, if you will, but the fact that they're a national company and their advertising will reach far beyond where ours normally goes. My issue is mainly with this document. There's nothing in here that says 45,000 for advertising. It very clearly says 50,000 for exactly what we just awarded them, 50,000. So I'm all for it. But I need it. I would, like Supervisor Bramer, prefer a multi-year agreement. And I would very much like a document that actually reflects the agreement we're making. Thank you.
Well, the copy I have is the operational budget does show it in there. So
Chairman,
go ahead.
on some of the other ones that we awarded, although the vast bulk, I think that Kristen did the scoring for us or helped us give staff recommendations on scoring. Did that happen with this one? I'm sorry if I missed that in my emails. Can you give me off the top of your head, knowing how you've scored the other ones and the scoring criteria under the existing scoring criteria, what they would be eligible for?
In my opinion, it is a very strong application that will definitely create a reach far beyond for our winter season. I mean, there's a lot of weight to the fact that it is in the off-peak season. So the benefit overall to the communities at large, not just Lake George, because that's where it's going to be, but beyond that, I think holds a very heavy weight. And I think the request is certainly something that, you know, if it's going to go towards specifically their marketing and advertising and, you know, bringing in more people from out of the area. They did provide us with a marketing plan, which detailed and outlined specifically where that would be and how they were planning on working with their social media and the digital platforms, as well as a little bit more of an enhanced budget. And so they did provide those. We asked those for them. And I would personally, I would support their recommendations and their requests. I think
I do believe also we have good support from the business community, CBB. They support this, and obviously they would like us to work for a multi-year contract.
And that's the ultimate goal. If we're going to make a significant investment such as this, a multi-year contract is preferable and recommended.
That's correct. Go ahead.
Thank you again. Can we hear, may I ask if the CEO can give us his
Kyle, would you like
thoughts
to?
on a multi-year contract?
Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we enter a new market, our mindset and our focus is to find somewhere where we can be long-term. So absolutely, we're entering Lake George as a new location for us with looking long-term, 3, 5, 7 years, the one little caveat in some of these decisions that we make is really our weather dependency. There are some times where a market has all of the right, demographic and data and statistics, and the weather can be marginal. And honestly, looking at Lake George, the weather looks really good, slightly on the marginal side, I would say, but it's something that we are really excited about, still taking that risk. And again, looking forward to long-term rather than, we definitely don't want to be, 1 year and done anywhere we go, assuming that all of the data comes together. The success of the event, including the weather dependency, will drive that. But we enter a market absolutely looking for long-term view.
Does that suffice, Supervisor Brown?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And since you gave me the floor again, I just would like to reiterate my concern about the ability of our local residents to be able to pay to enjoy this really neat event. And when we get to it, I'd like to know what our current occupancy tax budget is for distributing this additional 50,000. It doesn't have to be right this second.
If I may, Mr. Garrity, just address the concern of the local ticket price.
Sure.
Any of the communities that we operate in, we do a locals discount. And we want to help provide that benefit to the community to come enjoy it. Like you said, bringing 100,000 people over an 8-week period can be, in some ways, overwhelming for a community. And we'd like to be a generous member of the community to help those local residents. So that is a program that we do tailor it specifically to each market that we're in. But we're absolutely open to looking at that and introducing something like that to the local residents.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that.
Okay. Supervisor Weil.
Mr. Chairman, I think one thing that we get lost in, this is a for-profit entity and they are taking a risk. It's a new situation for them, new location. And I'm in total support that we move forward with this, and hopefully we can get to the point where we're talking about a 3, 5, or 7-year agreement with this organization.
Okay. Any other, Supervisor Hogan?
I just have a question for the Ice Castle guys. We just committed the park for 6 months and the event itself is 8 weeks. I was just wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about your setup and your, that's. Thanks.
Sure, Kyle, you want to? Go ahead.
So the general timeline is we would start in early to mid-October with a small crew of our kind of construction folks. They'll be setting up water lines, getting some of our temporary workshop areas constructed and ready to go, running electrical lines and so forth based on our plan. Then kind of mid-November, early to mid-November, we'll ramp up our hiring to bring on more people. And as the weather gets colder, then we can turn the water on and start freezing and actually growing the castle. So from basically in general, hypothetically, Thanksgiving to Christmas, we're building, our intensive construction phase, and then opening to the public as soon as we can around New Year's. And then again, weather dependency. In some of our markets like Colorado, we're at 9,000 feet up in the mountains. And so we open before Christmas and we stay open until early March. But our New Hampshire location, for example, we usually open early January and close late February, early March. So we're really only open to the public on average the months of January and February, about 8 weeks, and then March and April cleaning up. And again, that's a little bit weather dependent as well. We'll try to get off the site as early as we can, as soon as we can. And if we run into snowstorms in March or April, as can happen sometimes in the areas where we've operated, the cleanup can go into early May and mid-May sometimes as well, but we'll try to clean up as early as we can and get off the site.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple comments. I'm 100% behind this. This is a game changer, if you ask me. I mean, I've seen a lot of different tourism events and so forth, but this is an absolute game changer for us in the wintertime. Now, there's a lot of variables, the weather being the biggest one for them and us. But if the weather cooperates, it's a game changer. And I would see a multi-year contract coming out of this organization because they are for profit. They do want to make a buck. And this is a great place to make $1. And from what I'm hearing, they're very very strong on the corporate citizen end of it. By that, I mean, they're going to offer discounts to locals. They're going to look at doing whatever they can to give back to the community and the event. So I couldn't be happier with what I'm hearing so far. And I met these individuals at a couple months ago up at the Lake George, up at the, I think it was the Holiday Inn. They seem to me, and I consider myself a fairly good judge of character, to be straight up, forward. They're not a bunch of BSers. We've had other people get in front of us that I smelled BS from the moment they walked in the room. These guys weren't. They were honest. They didn't hide anything. They didn't try to mislead us. So I think this is going to be a great partnership for the North Country and our area. And I couldn't be happier with what we're starting here. So that's my comments.
Yeah, and I do think the other thing that we're losing sight of, the Winter Carnival goes on during this too, and you know, that's going to attract more people towards the Winter Carnival. They'll have another attraction to attend while they're already up in Lake George, and you know, based on Winterfest, people will want to come back to the area. So I think it's a win-win for Warren County, a win-win for our businesses up here. So one more, Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. I agree. It's a win-win for everybody. At what point in this process will we have the contract in front of us?
I don't know. You know, we don't know. To be determined, I guess. Robert? We know when we'll have a contract?
I can definitely be happy to do a contract when know that we're definitely contracting with the entity. Absolutely. We'll put one together.
So. Okay, anybody else? Kyle, any other comments to make to the committee?
No, just an appreciation as we've gone through this process. I think this started actually a couple of years ago, and happy that it's coming together. Mr. Beatty's point, just being able to work together we met so many individuals on our trip a couple of months ago, and we're really impressed by everybody we met, the energy and the synergy and just the attitude of really driving success together for all of our benefit. And I just couldn't be more pleased to work with a group like that. So really appreciative of that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move this application forward. Yeah.
Can we discuss if we actually have money budgeted to do this
Yeah.
award?
I can't answer that question.
We have money.
We have money.
Yes, we have money. Since 215,390 was moved into our budget, based on the last board meeting.
Okay.
We have 99,000.
So we have the,
Still, okay, because I thought we did allocate some of that, what we moved, but we still have 99,000. Okay. Great.
you have a,
A question.
go ahead.
Would whomever made the motion to make this allocation mind putting a contingency in there that it's based on success?
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Would whomever made the motion to make this allocation mind putting in there a contingency that it's based on successful execution of a contract?
Mike?
Of course, yes.
Thank
You have it. And who seconded the motion?
I did, and of course.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Let's vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes,
sorry for the record, can you just say how much the award is?
$50,000.
Thank you.
Are we all set? Thank you, Kyle. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you for spending your morning with us as well.
Great. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Next item, I'm going to turn this over to Kristen. We've been working on this. She has done an excellent job, but there's moving parts to these draft evaluations. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that. Did everybody get it?
Yes.
Is there anybody that did not get this? Okay, so, and then we had some last minute questions come through last night. So, I mean, they're in draft form. Kristen, you just want to elaborate what your goal was to work
Sure.
on it?
Sure. There's definitely, Chairman Garrity, there's definitely a lot of moving parts and pieces with this document. So in front of you, please find There's the draft of the evaluation strategy and scoring sheet, which is specifically, it would be used for this committee to evaluate future applications. So it's the grading criteria scoring sheet. The second document is the draft of the new Warren County occupancy tax grant application. So there's two very separate documents. One's going specifically to this committee for evaluation and with a strategy behind it. The second one is going specifically to the applicant with the additional guidelines and checklists with it. Future grant allocations and funding decisions, really what we want to do is look at these as investments, which will proactively generate that future occupancy tax collection, which is going to increase the revenues year after year as a self-generating. So if you looked at that strategy page, you would see on there, there's a graph there that specifically shows that circular type of reinvestment strategy behind it. So it's really to consistently reinvest in itself and create that ROI, that return on investment, which we've been looking to do moving forward. And that's detailed on page 2. So the main strategy behind the theory is that the county and the committees are really, you are the stewards of this fund. And by critically evaluating future events, programs and activities and funding requests, you're going to vet the applications and require the applicants to provide more data, more geographic and demographic information. You're going to look to identify ways in which they can increase our regional and countywide visibility and increase our room night stays and better determine the value and the impact that these events and programs are going to have moving forward in the future and what it'll have on the region. So really, it's a change in the strategy of how we're evaluating these requests for funding and whether or not it will impact and positively impact moving forward. So if you jump to page 3 and 4 of that first document, the evaluation strategy, it asks really some critical questions that we want to really look at in terms of investment, the economic impact, the soundness and fiscal stability of the event, and the event marketing. So within these criteria, you're asking more specific critical questions as to the value of that event to the region and determining whether or not it can reinvest and create that mechanism as part of an overall strategy to realign the process as you vet these applications. And then within that same document, you have, again, based on those 3 tenets, new scoring criteria that allows for a range of points to be allocated based on the soundness of the application. And so it doesn't necessarily pigeonhole exact amounts to be distributed as in the past based on the points, like the last evaluation criteria. So for example, if it was from 1 to 50 in terms of points, they would get 20,000. If it was 40 to 60, but rather it gives the ability. So if they reach that threshold of 125 points, which is the maximum amount, and they're asking for $20,000, then obviously it would make sense that they've met all the criteria, and that makes sense. If they don't, then you have the ability to look at it from a percentage standpoint to say, well, does this make sense? They gave us this, but they didn't give us that. So if they ask for 20, maybe you give them 10 because they didn't hit all the right points and all the right criteria. So again, it gives you a little bit more flexibility without specifically saying, for this, you get that. So it leaves that leeway to this committee to make those decisions. And again, the whole process is really to create a parity so that all the applications are looked at on the same level and you're comparing apples to apples. Moving on to the second document, which is the new Warren County draft grant application. The goal there is to provide this committee with the critical information to make sound and clear evaluations as to the event's overall value to the region, to determine if it's really a true and sound investment. So from on page 1, where you have the application checklist, to the clear language that identifies the eligibility status, proposed schedule of awards, rating criteria, application rules and guidelines, award requirements, and then the post-event requirements. The application was created so that it's straightforward, comprehensive, and it asks the applicants to provide all to the county and the committee key points of data which will allow you to make sound decisions based on the information provided by that applicant, taking the guesswork out of whether or not it's of value or not. In looking at some of these two, we also do have a few things that will need to be reincorporated in speaking with legal.
Yeah.
So we spoke with our legal office, and there are a few things that we have just been made aware of that will need to change and be incorporated so that both the contract language and the application process and the language in the applications match, so there aren't any future legal issues or any future additional problems. Additionally, in this new application, there are forms which weren't there before to make this process very simple for the applicant. and also to get the data so that there are no questions whether or not we have a marketing plan, whether we have a budget, whether we have our zip codes and our data being collected from the attendees to the event, so that we can go back and say, where did they come from? Were they really from out of town? Were they just local? So this is really to sort of simplify that process, not just for this committee, but also to simplify the process for the applicant to say, here's all you need to fill out. This is what we want to hear from you. These are the key data points that we need to see, the information we need to make a sound and just decision moving forward. And does it make sense? Is it a good investment of your money, of the county's money into a new event or an existing event? And, you know, you have sort of a checks and balances process at this point. So again, creating that parity and equality among all the applicants. In addition to the new forms, there's also lists, and we talked a little bit about this in relation to the municipalities. And again, these are all recommendations. These are all draft forms, but it's for your review. It's for you all to look at it and please get back to me with your suggestions, what you like, what you don't like, what you don't understand, what you need more clarification on. And in this case of Appendix B, we talked a little bit about eligible and ineligible uses of funding. And, you know, again, that goes back to, maybe we just do go back to what our attorney, you know, says, and to use just generic language. But there is some benefit to allow certain allowables and non-allowable expenditures in relation, specifically related to events. If it is going to make sure that it will reinvest itself into the overall fund. So these are things, again, for your consideration. It's not an exhaustive list, but rather they're just suggestions. So overall, in a big sort of high level coming down, it's a strategy that is looking to create a way in which we really look at things in a different way and look at it as investments. These are investments that we are making going forward in events, in activities, in programs that will ultimately circle back over and over and create a bigger pot to be used year after year. So.
And then I do know last night we got a late email from the attorney and there again, there's things that are in the application that we need to get in the application to meet with the contract. So I think we really need to bring this back in July also with these changes that Kristen could make. Supervisor Bramer, you've been
Thank
waiting
you.
patiently.
Yes, I'm so patient. That's me. I wanted to say, Kristen, I know you put a lot of work into this. You've only been here for a few weeks, and this is a great improvement for us. And I know the whole department worked hard on that. So I thank everybody there for bringing it together, because I think it will be very helpful for the supervisors to feel like we have more support behind the decisions that we're making, more objective criteria and the scoring. I like the new situation, you know, not having to have you get this many points, this is how much money you have. We can work on that. And I really love the forms and things that you put into the application to help the applicants so that they are not, you know, scrambling. They understand exactly what we want. These are our expectations. I've looked over everything. I know you guys sent it out on Friday, I think, and I had a chance to look at it over the weekend. I think it's great. I don't really have any major concerns. I would be happy moving it forward today, subject to our county attorney's review or changes, you know, like they normally do. I do have a couple of tiny things that I will just mention now in case anyone cares to hear them, which I'm sure you don't. I would like consideration of the changing the total points to 100, if that's possible, because then we could say, all right, if you only got 90 points, then you can get like 90% of your funding request. Something more simple than that. And then on the eligible things, I would take out the portable toilets as an eligible expenditure. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions about Supervisor Wild?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I did get a chance to review this weekend, and it is very comprehensive, and I think it's a great step forward. I do have concerns because what I'd like to do is be able to get feedback from some of our events that we fund and hear what they have to say about being able to satisfy the requirements in here and make sure that where we're going is something that will be acceptable to us as well as acceptable to them. So it's more easily implemented. So I'd like to see if we could, I'm not sure if we have to reach out individually or whether we could do it from a group, but I'd very much like to hear from the events that we fund in terms of their, again, their
Perhaps the
opinion
major
of this.
events you mean that we fund currently or they're
Yeah,
on
the
our
ones-
list and
The ones that are currently on our list, as well as some that we might propose for the future to find out what they believe is good for them or very difficult for them to approve.
Good idea. We can certainly, Kristen.
If I may, Supervisor Wild, it's some of the things that we are asking of them have actually been in our original applications, and asking for some of the basics like a budget, a marketing plan, really is to really help this committee make those very sound decisions. And if some of our existing partners out there who are the signature events, the big events that we work with every year, have issues or, have some challenges coming up with some of these things, we from the department, I think, can work with them to, sort of bridge that gap between this is kind of a different animal from what you've been working with in the past. So I think, we've worked well with our events in the past, keeping that relationship, keeping that partnership and saying, we understand it's a little bit of a change and maybe it's a little more time consuming or it's a little bit more challenging to get some of that data, but we'll work with you so that we can make it an easier process because it will be a change. It will be definitely, I mean, change is always not the easiest, but I think it will be a benefit overall as a whole to not just to this county, but also to the organizers to be able to show year after year if they've gathered the data or if they have that information. Hey, look how well we're doing. We're really making an impact in our community. We're really making an impact to the county.
Right. That's a trust but verify, right?
Right.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. Well done on this document. It's very, very thoughtful. I mean, down to some minute details like umpires for games being an eligible expense. Really very well done. It will provide a lot more clarity as we move through the process. The only request I have, which I made yesterday, and I think it went out in writing, is that on Schedule B, you make it very, very clear that that list is for use only with county awarded events. Thanks.
Supervisor Stroud, did you have any questions? No? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Beatty first.
I have no problem getting some feedback from some of the events that make some sense. But let's not lose sight of the fact that we, the committee and the counties in charge of the money, and they're coming in asking us. So if an event says, well, I don't want to do that, give you that information, or I'm hesitant on doing that, well, that's their right, and they can say that. But we, as a county, have a responsibility to the residents to make sure we get the biggest bang for the buck for their occupancy tax dollars. So I get a little bit hesitant when we start wanting a lot of feedback from people that are asking us for money, and then they want to craft it so that they don't give us the information that helps us make good, sound decisions. Again, it's their option. They don't have to ask us for the money.
No.
Okay, so.
I do think you're correct, Supervisor Beatty. I just look at a not-for-profit that may not have the staff to do that, we get that now, that sometimes the not-for-profits fidget at getting the information we want. So we need to work, we should be here to help them be able to get that information. I think that's what our plan is in the office, to be able to help the ones so they can get over the hump. Change is always difficult at times, but we want to get them over the hump the first time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Supervisor Wells.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is a comment, basically just minutia, but the county attorney would probably recognize this as well as Supervisor Bramer. You put in here on the, I'm sorry, the evaluation strategy grading, one of the very first pages, you talk about the investments and you use the word should be. And I prefer to say shall be.
Mhm.
It makes a big difference in terms of,
Which
but this was just inside, I did two-sided, but it's on the evaluation strategy grading criteria. And what is occupancy tax?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down. And I think there was others there that I just said, well, I found one that's, there might be others, but I wasn't going to highlight the whole document.
Who else had questions? Chairwoman Seaver.
I have two questions, but since Supervisor Wild just brought that up, what are you talking about? What section?
This is, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman,
No.
in the evaluation strategy document, the draft 1.4, the very first page, what is occupancy tax?
Mhm.
Fourth paragraph down,
Mhm.
grant allocations and funding decisions should be viewed as investments. I'm just saying it shall be. There's a difference between should versus shall. Shall says you will do that versus, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Thank you, Supervisor Wild. I come from a legal background, so I'm aware of the difference between shall and should. And I just think that the county attorney, it's important that, as we say shall, there's no wiggle room, as you indicated. It should be in that suggestion. But I know the county attorney reviewed this, and will continue to review it because it does, we've always asked to make sure that our county attorney is up to speed on these things. But I wanted to make sure I understood what you were talking about. And I hope all supervisors get comments. Is this going to be sent out to all supervisors to look at?
We certainly can, sure. I don't know who got them now
Just
so
committee
far.
members.
I think the committee, but we could send it out. And also, good point. The county attorney sent us out a late email to a few of us last night. He had concerns. I'd like to see us try to incorporate his concerns into this document so we can look at it next month and say, we have all the concerns in this one document. So we can look at a clean copy without making revision. I mean, 1 month is not going to make or break this. If we bring it back in July and get these changes, like the contract that asks to disclose funding, he has certain things about that. You have questions about.
May I ask my other two questions?
Sure. Go
As
for
it
it.
relates to that, Mr. Chairman, however, his suggestion was to rescind the prior resolution that has boilerplate contract language. For example, in Supervisor Hogan's request, hers is for marketing, but yet the boilerplate language that he can't change because it was done by resolution talks about removing garbage. She doesn't have garbage for marketing requests. So he brought that up as a standard housekeeping to have that resolution rescinded, that piece of it, so that he has some authority and flexibility to make the contracts match the resolutions, which is the purpose of that, if we won't see contracts before we vote on them. But that being said, I would just ask then that the calendar is adjusted, because you won't be able to meet that calendar, and that will make an impact for events as they look at applying for funding, because if it's pushed back another month, you won't have that August 1 date out. So perhaps entities that are looking for funding should know that. But that notwithstanding, my two concerns were two issues. One, to Supervisor Wild's point about entities weighing in on this that have applied for funding. The hospitality group has been asking for many of these changes for years, and have been looking at this in detail, providing a lot of feedback. And I know we talked about it on their call too, and I certainly appreciate all their support. I'm excited to see so many of entities who have applied for funding be able to make suggestions and have their suggestions in this document. So I know we have meant some of that, perhaps not as exhaustive as possible, but this is meant to provide that information to the board to be able to do accurate scoring as well. So I'm excited to see that scoring document really looked at. But my second point on it is I'm happy to see the safety and law enforcement needs. I'm troubled by, I know we had a great Jeep event, but I'm troubled by the lack of communication that we have with many of our events with law enforcement and EMS, and the fact that they were very disappointed in terms of feeling like they're supported by our emergency response community. And that comes from us being able to coordinate when we give funding out, whether it be through the CVB or through this process, emergency services. And I know that Kristen, now being on board as trying to act as that liaison between the Sheriff's Office Emergency Services and our events and our municipalities, and that's a lot on her plate. But I would just ask that there be some type of an internal document that comes to the committee so that we know that follow-up has happened. So if in fact they say, yes, they do require the services, or that they've consulted, that can't be an NA. It needs to be, have you consulted as a requirement Because if they don't feel they need those services, then they'll just say, no, we haven't consulted. I think for planning purposes, we saw that with Americade and the Balloon Festival. And now I'm seeing this review from, after action reports that we're requiring, we need to be very sensitive to the emergency response capability in a small community for all the events that are taking place over a busy season. So I don't know if there's a way when we do the scoring sheets or the evaluation to the committee to give follow-up on, in fact, these things were coordinated.
I do believe it should be in the application.
Right, but what I'm talking about is more, may I respond?
Yeah, sure.
More of a internal document that would come to your committee members saying, if it's Kristen, if it's Joanna, if it's Lisa, whoever that went through the application and just highlighted, they've confirmed it. That this last one, I went through all your applications recently, and a bunch of them had said that they did contact law enforcement or EMS, and there was not that communication back and forth. And it really wasn't addressed during the evaluation process, but we want to be able to respond to our tourists and our residents as our busy season is here. And this is just case in point on why this application really, I'm disappointed to not see it voted on today and move forward because so much work's gone into it for so long. But I certainly hope in July that this is a priority and we can continue to have that discussion, which means the municipality discussion will come later in the year.
Supervisor Brown.
Thanks. On that point about the safety and talking to the sheriff, I did note actually in the Ice Castles application, they said that they had not consulted with our sheriff yet. Is that something that we can put in this application document, the contact person who they should be talking to? And like the chairwoman said, don't put this as a yes or no. Like you need to, when did you reach out to them instead of yes or no? Make sure that they know, because I think they should be at least advised of when these things are happening and how many people are expected, that kind of thing. And as to the calendar issue, I know that is set forth in the application on page 3. I think this is the application. Yeah. I would like us not to have to bump that back. I think it's important that we get it in and get our applications going and have them due by the September 1 deadline. Kristen, can you provide us any advice about whether we can still leave that as applications will be available August 1 if we pass it at the July board meeting? Well, I guess we can if we don't pass it through committee today.
It will still need to be vetted through legal to make sure all the language here matches contractual, to my understanding, correct? Should be.
Yeah, I think.
Right, actually, if
That's the most critical, I think, to make sure that all the language matches to cover ourselves for the future. I prefer to legal.
Okay, thank you. That was one of the things I wanted to mention with that. We have the application, the occupancy tax grant application, which is very thorough on it. And when I look at that and then compared it to the contract that we have to use for the contract with the grant, I call them the organizers. We refer to them, I guess, as special event organizers that are receiving the tax money. There's a mandated form of contract that we have to use. It came about from Resolution 238 of 2005, and it was reiterated in Resolution 177 of 2011. And that form contract has certain requirements of information to be provided by the vendor, the special event organizer. That information is not on our existing or proposed new occupancy tax grant application. That's just a discrepancy between them. One example is the grant application contains a description of the kind of insurance that the special event vendor is supposed to have. The contract, however, includes an additional entry on insurance for liquor law liability insurance of $500,000 or more if there's going to be alcohol served on the premises during the event. The application doesn't mention anything about liquor law insurance. And if we accept a particular event organizer and provide them with money and they put together a budget and an application and it goes through and gets approved by the county and they get their funding, and then we send a contract from the county attorney's office to them, they're going to look at this and they're going to see, hey, I didn't know I had to have this extra insurance. That's an additional cost to them that maybe if they knew that they would have to have this insurance at first, it would have changed their budget. It would have changed maybe their request for funding from the county or their request for funding from some other source. It's just something that would blindside them. And there were a few other small discrepancies as well of things that the contract form, the mandated contract form requires us to obtain from the vendor, the special event organizer, that our proposed occupancy tax grant application does not have. So from the legal end of it, I would say either I need to have that information in the application so that it jives with the mandated contract, or we do away with the mandated contract as it was originally adopted back in 2005 and use some other contract, whether it's using the same general language we have, that it's a contract acceptable and formed by the county attorney. And that contract would definitely be drawn from the information that's on our proposed application here now, the new occupancy tax and grant application. We would use that information in crafting a new contract. I put that forward for your consideration. Chairman Gary.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. Yeah.
What?
Is it possible to pass these documents out of committee with the understanding that it'll be taken up by the full board in the July meeting? But that will ask the county attorney to incorporate the language from the contract into these documents and get them to the entire board for review, maybe within a week or two? Can we do that? Just so we don't delay the entire process for the whole year.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. I would support that. I don't hear anyone today saying they hate the new form. They want a little more time. They want to maybe have the county attorney update it. I think that's okay to bring it. My only other thought is we could say we defer it over to finance and have Robert figure out if he needs to have us rescind that other resolution and bring it through finance.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, can someone explain to me the consequences of delaying this a month?
Somebody want to answer that?
Well, maybe I'll defer to Kristen, but my thought was that she's got a new schedule in here for people to understand when they're going to be awarded the money. And she's worked it back from October 1st, all these months, to give us a specific time frame about when we as a committee should be working on the applications and awarding the money. I don't want to screw all that up.
I don't know what understand what
This
the consequences.
May I?
I don't believe that we have any applications pending, do we, other than snow castles? And there's no money available other than 40,000? Is that correct?
No, we have 99,000. We've given 50, so that leaves 49,000. We do have winter ski races at Gore Mountain that would start in December.
So we still have plenty of time to make an award if we delay this. Supervisor Hogan.
I thought this process was for next year's money. So what this timeline does is give a very clear, it brings us right up to December, where people who are trying to organize events for next year have the commitment and can start their organizing. Is that correctly stated?
I'm confused. I don't know. I don't think so.
The timeline that you've laid out here, it puts us making awards for next year within the budget cycle, or within the budget process, but also allowing people who have events next year to know they have a commitment so they can go ahead and start their planning process.
These are draft forms. So these are, for lack of a better word, placeholders for a draft to go forward. And basically it was split up so that round one would be for the shoulder season awards that would be awarded for any events from November of this year until April of 2022. Round two would then fall for the annual and seasonal going into 22. So there is flexibility in those schedule rounds. There is. To answer your question, Mike. That the committees and, decision on how quick or how slowly, but my personal recommendation would be that we are careful with the language that we use moving forward, and that we do vet it through legal and make sure that whatever we do put out there doesn't need to be changed 7 times. That's just my personal opinion.
Chairwoman Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did ask for a red line version to come out with any changes that were made from feedback. I don't see this one particular section in it, but it's the same thing we did with the ethics and that we've done with other resolutions is we've allowed an opportunity for administrative changes to be made to to other applications or other policies if it doesn't substantially change it. So the idea here is that every time you make a change on this, that's substantial, you'd have to come back through committee, but administratively, as Robert's pointing out, in terms of a liquor license for something that may apply, or I think his issue is, and I'll get to that in a separate, a little bigger than what we're talking about here, but allowing that language so that you can update this without having to come through committee every single time for a non-substantial change. We do that in many other things. And I think that's to make it so that we can respond to those types of needs. But the calendar, who that impacts, to Supervisor Wiles' question, are the people, the entities that are applying to make their plans for occupancy tax awards. And so as you can see, August 1, the application would go out, due date September 1. So you're really just pushing all of that back a month, which if someone's having an event in November and they're just getting awarded about their funding November 1, then if that's what the committee decides to do, then that's what they decide to do. But I do want to bring up that we've had multiple meetings on it. We've been able to circulate. Kristen's worked really hard to make sure she had input from so many different entities. It would be nice to see it forwarded today. However, notwithstanding, what Robert brought up is separate and apart from this application. And that this committee, I would really ask that you look at that. What he's saying to you is you have an old resolution that mandates contract language. We don't have that in other contracts. It's the same for any entity that you're giving OCTAX money to, and some of them don't apply. For other contracts, he's writing a contract based on the resolution that this board approves. So I think it's proactive of him, and I think it's smart on a separate issue to ask this committee to please rescind that language and allow the county attorney's office. Every other resolution we use says in a form to be determined by the county attorney. He's asking you to be able to do his job to write a good contract. It's a separate issue with a resolution. And I would prefer you deal with this one and then you take up his request for an amendment of a resolution.
I'm confused. But anyways, so I'm going to ask the committee, what, you want to delay the application for 30 days? Or do you want to move forward with the draft evaluation strategy and scoring sheets? Committee?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we could share this draft with anyone that might be thinking about applying early, but it gives us a chance. I only saw this. It showed up in my inbox late Thursday. And I just, to be honest, I don't work all weekend long on this stuff.
Yep.
So I need some time to go through this and make sure that we're making a good decision. I don't understand what the push is.
Yep. Can I just ask the chairwoman a question?
Sure.
We're delaying the proposal for 30 days. We're not delaying people from getting money forever for 30 days, correct?
You didn't delay someone from getting money today.
No, that's what I'm saying. We're
No,
not-
but that's exactly my point, is that if I may answer your question,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, the whole goal this year since you became chair of OCTAX and Tourism was to be able to bring on an expert that would be able to help our partners in our community and our board fully evaluate the impact of occupancy tax in all our municipalities and be able to convey that and help people apply for this. Part of that was advance notice and preparing us to be evaluating these. And so since that time, that has been worked on. You had 2 committee meetings last month that even talked about this, and any ideas were asked to get to Kristen on it. So no, you're not delaying it forever. You're still working off an old scoring sheet and application. And I think all of this is great discussion, but you do have a calendar in front of you that would be able to assist, and you have plenty of time between now and the next board meeting to continue to discuss and provide that feedback, whether it be the should versus shall to the county attorney and to the tourism office or if it's a language on putting the liquor license or EMS on it. But I would just ask that you change the dates if you're going to delay it by a month. That's all. And that you take up Robert's issue separately. It's a separate issue.
The resolution issue. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to ask committee what you want to do.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Stroud.
thank you. I thought the county attorney made a very good point that, you know, the application, the contract, the scoring guidelines, you know, they need to be integrated, comprehensive, and there are parts that need to be shifted around so that they are integrated and comprehensive. And we do have Schedule A. And if I'm looking at this Appendix B, it seems to be incongruent with Schedule A in a lot of cases. You take a look at the ineligible uses for expenditures. And you take a look, say, for example, the Balloon Festival. A lot of what the Balloon Festival spends its money on would be ineligible according to this Appendix B. Did anyone look into that? I mean, travel expenditures for the balloon people, annual operating, administrative maintenance costs, promotional items. This is the Balloon Festival does do promotional items and logo development. Every year they develop a new logo. Website development. Certainly they have to have website. I mean, I could go on, but the point is, I don't think this is ready. You know, I would like to see more time spent on it. There's improvements to be made. Thank you.
Yeah, Supervisor Stroud, I did bring up that question about the room nights because I know that's one of the things they do pay a lot. They use a lot of their money into room nights, and I did briefly discuss it with Kristen. So, any other comments before we move on? I got to know what the committee wants to do. It's going to be a problem. I felt that the way our application will be a problem for the Balloon Festival. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think the application is very good. It doesn't mean we can't make changes to it later. So I'd like to move it forward, subject to the changes that our county attorney is recommending. And I will that is a motion, and I will reiterate what Supervisor Beatty said before, is that we shouldn't let the tail wag the dog. I mean, we should set forth what we want and not be bending to an individual applicant's desire to have money. While I love the Balloon Fest, and I think we can certainly work with them.
Well, that was just one example.
Okay, so you're
But
making that a motion.
I am.
You're seconding it. Do we have any more discussion? All right, let's vote to move it ahead. Those in favor, raise your hand to move it ahead. 1, 2, 3. To delay it. It's a tie, 3-3. What do we do now, parliamentary? Okay. All right, let's move on to the resolution or the request to rescind part of 238 of 2005.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
before you go to that, may I just ask for a time frame on when this will be presented back to committee and also
July,
the July committee meeting, July 20th?
whatever the date is.
And may I ask, please, within a week, could we please have the changes from our county attorney and from our tourism department, from Kristen, to go out in a draft form? I would like them redlined so I could see the difference between this and what's being added. And within a week to the full board. That way they have plenty of time to look at that before the July 20th meeting, with the expectation that you'll have a in-depth discussion and hopefully pass the new application July 20th with the new dates.
Yes, thank you.
The 1 week, that's agreeable with.
Well, I mean, we got to give the staff time to get it
That's what
together.
I'm asking, Mr. Chairman.
I can't tell if they.
No, I'm asking them.
You're asking the staff,
I am.
directing your question. Robert,
And Robert.
tourism? Yes,
Yes.
let's do it.
Robert?
Do
Yes,
it.
that's a yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, what about this 238 of 2005? What do we have to do there? Somebody help me.
Well, I actually have a question on that one, and probably my question for the committee and the board would be, would you rather, I mean, my concern is just to make sure that the application and the mandated contract jive. And I can either then work with tourism and make the changes to the application so that there's no discrepancies between that and the contract as mandated, the form contract, or we can then alternatively rescind the form contract, and then I really wouldn't see any need to make changes to the application to make it jive with the contract, because I'd be doing it the other way around, making a contract that uses the information on the application that's being proposed and draft the contract that way.
So
I can do either one. I'm happy to do either one. So it's not that I have
it's
a,
the pleasure of the committee. Go ahead, Supervisor.
I'll make a motion that we rescind the old resolution so that the county attorney can make the contract updated to what we needed to reflect for
That's your,
the current application and any future legal requirements or whatever he needs to throw in the new contract.
okay, do we have a second, Supervisor Beatty? Any discussion? Supervisor Wild.
I guess I can't follow this. So I'm going to go back to my status quo. What's the consequences of not doing it now?
The resolution?
Yeah, this resolution, this resolution to rescind the contract, I think is what we're doing. I'm not sure exactly what we're even doing. So
We're the second part of this now is we're rescinding resolution 238.
it's 238 in my packet.
I don't know. It's,
I didn't see 238. That's what it's not even on my agenda that I have.
No.
this,
None of mine.
this came later on.
So I have no idea what we're talking about.
May I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Our county attorney is working with limited staff. He's doing the best possible job he can. This was sent out on Friday, again, with a lot of different feedback, and he didn't have an opportunity to look at it in depth. He did have a chance to speak with Kristen and with Joanne and spoke with them a couple days ago after Ryan Dickey looked at it. It was unfortunate these questions came up last night, but the bottom line was a very good end result, which is that we are operating very differently with contracts with Octex than we do all our other contracts. And it is limiting his ability to customize our resolutions with contracts, which is something this board has historically asked for ever since I've been on it. So I applaud his efforts. It's like I said, unfortunate it came late. However, he has just made a commitment that within the next week, he will send over some boilerplate information that should go into every single Octex application. At the same time, all he's asking for is the contract language that you put in every other contract that is a form to be approved by the county attorney. That's, if you read your resolutions every month, you see that almost in every single contract. And I think it's a good suggestion that he's just trying to get the job done and bringing it to your attention. But if you prefer to wait, I'm sure he can send out the boilerplate information and you can have this entire discussion again in a month. And in the meantime, we'll keep doing the contracts the way the resolution requires them.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do. Do we also need to rescind the resolution from 2011?
I prefer that somebody knows what 2011 is.
the 2011 one just recites that's the contract being used for it. It's in paragraph 1 of resolution 238 of 2005. I can't recall offhand the paragraph in resolution 177 of 2011. It just recites that that's the contract form that's used for these occupancy tax agreements with the vendors, the special event organizers.
So if one gets rescinded, the other gets negated?
Probably be best to put both in the language of both in the particular sections, that it's both of those two resolutions, but it would be just those particular sections if we're just wanting to do away with that form contract, that mandated form contract. Not doing away with the rest of the language in the resolutions, just the language of that particular sections that deal with the mandated contract, as I call it.
It's to wait.
I have a suggestion. What if we refer this to finance, personnel and finance, and then have these resolutions sent out to committee so everybody has a chance? And then they can act on them that day. Would that be satisfactory, or do you want
That's fine with me as personnel chair. I am the oversight committee for the county attorney's office. So I think that would be
Would
appropriate to
that
bring it
be
through.
okay? So we can
I
get,
can withdraw my motion.
would you? Okay, so we can move on from this? And get it to personnel finance.
I can, yes, can I make a motion to refer it to personnel?
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Second by Supervisor Hogan. Let's vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Carried. There it is. Okay.
I'm lost.
Do we have anything else, Joanne, to bring up?
No, just that pending item is.
Good job.
what Kristen will try to next.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to bring up? Supervisor Kramer.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this is not on the agenda because it is scheduled for a later discussion, but I do want to bring up the Granicus contract or possibility of a contract. I know I saw some emails about it and some concerns, but I still think it's a good way for the county to collect our occupancy tax funding and get them from the short-term rentals in a more efficient way than we are doing it now. I know the treasurer's office is working hard, and I think this will help them bring in as much funding as we possibly can, as well as allowing our municipalities who want to piggyback off of that contract for the enforcement and the zoning kind of issues that come along with our short-term rentals. So it's my understanding it's coming to the July 20th meeting, and I would be very happy to see that happen.
All right, very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Don, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do, Chairman Garrity. We have a few things from Gina Mincer here. One, she pointed out that Winterfest was in parentheses or in quotation marks promotion to tell the world that Lake George is open for business with winter activities to offer. The wristband was a way for us to gauge where people came from / marketing efforts. She also added, Chairman Sieber, thanks for addressing EMS, Sheriff, State Police, reference to the Jeeps. Lake George Regional Chamber, CVB, did reach out in advance of the event to those entities. Venue reps said they would handle, but that didn't happen. Learned major lesson. Goal of LGR CVB to have quarterly meeting with emergency services to review convention event calendar. Thank you. Ms. Mincer also mentioned this was actually posted for the Parks O&M meeting and didn't show up till after it was over. But she did mention that this past weekend, the Adirondack Jeep Invasion Show and Shine in Festival Commons was a huge success. The client wants to come back and use the village for more of the weekend and add another day for the weekend. All loved the area. And that's what we have.
Okay, thank you.
Do I need to make a motion to have the presentation on July 20th?
No, I got it. We'll get it on the agenda.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned. We have a second?
I got it.
All right, we're out of here. Thank you. Okay.